Welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. In this podcast, I interview successful business leaders and industry experts to help you grow your business. In this episode, my guest is Iliana Rocha. She's the president of Clubnet Solution Inc. She and her team has been helping business leaders to simplify business management with the systems, processes, and capabilities to achieve their business goals and objectives. We had a very interesting topics around the leadership, teamwork, team management, and company culture, and many others. As you know, great business leadership and innovation in a company requires us to share and learn many different new perspectives. Iliana shares a unique perspective and also her take on a very complex and difficult challenges around the business leadership. I hope you enjoy this discussion. Don't forget to send me your feedback, like and subscribe to this channel. Until next time, please welcome Iliana Rocha. Hi guys, welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. My guest today is Iliana Rocha. Iliana, welcome to podcast. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So, you've been helping business leaders for many years, Iliana. Where do you see some of the biggest challenges or opportunities, if you want to put it that way, for a lot of businesses? Over the last couple of years, we've gone through a lot of interruptions, in a business. Where do you see some of those challenges that business leaders are struggling with?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we all know that COVID took us by surprise, and a lot of businesses had to very quickly figure out how to make remote work happen, right? And surprisingly enough, we're 3 years into it, and I don't know that we've made many strides as to how to optimize our work, specifically as it relates to asynchronous work in teams that might not be co-located and so on. So I think that we're going to continue to struggle a little bit with the hybrid workplace, and that's where I help leaders in terms of figuring out leadership style, new hybrid workplaces, office and infrastructure to support that type of work.
Yeah, I guess I think that's an interesting point. There's no, a one template fits for all. Everybody's trying to figure out as they go through, what works for their company. I think is the nature of business as well. What I see is that, business leaders trying to figure out is in office going to work or is a hybrid is going to work. I think one thing for sure that everybody's about some sort of agreement that just 100% remote will not work. Either some sort of hybrid or some days in office or some days at home, something like that. They have to figure it out what's going to work for their business.
I would tend to agree. So there are some very successful companies that do remote only, but they were born only, right? And that is a subset of companies that are very distributed and they have been building their operations that way. So that's easier to manage than trying to transition from being fully into the office to a hybrid. You're absolutely correct. Every business is unique, operating within a unique context. So there is a spectrum of options out there. I think people consider it. There seems to be a very binary understanding of you're either in the office or you're hybrid. But there is a variety of solutions that are available to businesses that want to explore that way of working.
So that's a good point, Iliana. How about the building culture? I think that's where a lot of business leaders I see that they're struggling. That how do I build a culture in a company? Individualism starts when they're working at their home, right? So yeah, even though you work as a team, but you still kind of isolated at your home office by yourself. So how do you build a culture? Where do you see the struggles around building the culture and the team environment in office?
Mm-hmm. I think we can start off with an assumption that has been around in terms of building culture for a really long time. And there's this assumption that somehow culture is built from the top down. And the more that we move away from like the command and control type environment, the less accurate that assumption is. And these days we need to co-create culture with our employees if we want them to be truly engaged and successful, right? So some of the things to consider are just because we're remote does not mean we need to be distant. There's actually a book around that. So leaders is saying, what is your vision for your organization? What are the then how do you live? Also, not just talk about them, but how do they present within your organization? We focus on your principle is collaboration. then I would say, okay, so we are now working in a hybrid environment. We don't get to interact as much. How do we as a team try to work ideas of how to stay connected and in touch with each other and build that camaraderie as we're working in a remote environment? So again, like it has to be purposeful, but it also needs to allow for feedback from the employees so that they truly feel like they belong to the organization and want to help co-create that culture with you.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And it's a great point, but I was speaking to one of my colleague, business owner, the other day, and the point he was making that I was always under the pressure that we got more productive during the COVID because we're not driving as much, we're not taking as much breaks, so we are more productive. But I was surprised to find that he thinks we were less productive. One of the reasons he thinks that it's going on is when you work in a remote environment and you in a Zoom and a Teams all the time, you need more meeting to stay on top of everything. You need to, set up a lot more meetings that you would set up in an office, and to simply just make sure everybody's on a same page. So you are communicating the same level as others are. What are your thoughts on that? In terms of productivity, is that required more meetings if you work remotely in a Zoom in a hybrid environment, or is it simply just his understanding that we got a lot more productive that way?
So I don't think it's just his understanding, but I think it is still a misguided way of looking at it. And the reason that I say that is even in fully office environments, we have somehow decided that let's at the meeting, you don't get input and you don't get information, and somehow don't agree that you need to process and not productive when you come. That is just a very safe way for people to think about it. Truly, you can be more productive, whether it's in the office or not, through less meetings. If you sit down and as a team determine what are the principles that we're going to adopt when it comes to meetings. So, for example, prior to the meeting, we're going to set the agenda, but we're going to be very clear as to what the desired outcomes are. And if a decision needs to be made, then we have to be very clear about who needs to be in that meeting and how we're going to come to this decision. Then what happens after the meeting? How are we going to communicate the decision for everybody who is impacted but not part of the meeting, and how we're going to ensure that the decision gets perpetuated in all of the other teams that may not have necessarily been needed for the meeting. So my feedback is whether you're hybrid or not, assuming that meetings are going to help you stay on top of your work is an invalid function. There needs to be more thought given to how do we handle work so that it's asynchronous, so that we can only utilize meetings for things that absolutely cannot be.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of what you mentioned, I think that reminded me that you need a lot of checks and balances around the meetings as well. Does a really meeting required? And how do you follow up on a meeting? What's the outcome of the meetings? So you need to put a lot of those checks and balances to measure the productivity or effectiveness of the meeting as well, not just simply setting up a meeting and go. That would apply to the same in person or in a hybrid, I guess, right? In a cloud.
Absolutely agree. And then, the checks and balances, I think part of the issue is that we consider productivity to be equal to busyness, right? And a lot of people have glorified this hustle culture that we have, and the more busy you appear, the more productive you must be. I look at it the other way. Productivity and what we the biggest output with the smallest input, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about checks and balances, let's talk about performance metrics for your employees, performance metrics for your processes. And then with every change that you make, you can observe the impact to these performance metrics, whether they be on your people or some other resource or process that you have, and then determine how effective change was, right? So very much goes to, you need to know, first of all, what the right checks and balances that you should monitor on. You need to baseline your performance against them. And then when you're running experiments and new way of working, then you can evaluate in a very data-driven way whether you have improved your process.
Right. You did how we measure this performance and these metrics, did they change over the last few years? Was it a different way of doing it when we were in the office and doing it digitally or in a meetings? Did that piece change how we measure both performance or processes?
I would say that on average, companies, at least the reports that I have read, companies have estimated that they were more productive when they did the hybrid environment. Now, I question that. First of all, I think it's a mixed bag. Second of all, I think everybody has defined productivity so differently that I don't think we can make generalizations, right? Yeah, sorry, what I feel like I missed the answer to your question, but
No, I was trying to find, and before, pre-COVID, we were measuring productivity. Somebody comes at 9 o'clock, they leave at 5 o'clock.
yeah,
So we were just measuring in terms of the presence or measuring it on a clockwise, right? They put that many hours then. So that's how we measure productivity. But definitely that option is no longer there anymore, right? So we can't measure people's time they spend on a work. Or we have to measure either performance of the work, the task completed, or we have to measure their effectiveness in a company. So I was trying to find out, a lot of companies still, I find, Iliana, they still have an old way of measuring productivity that by the clock. That no longer available anymore, right? So they have to figure out what's a new way of measuring it. Instead of measuring how many hours you spent, they have to measure the completion of the task or
exactly.
put on a team. So I was trying to find how did that change from your views, that, how do we measure that, technology changes, or what else changes that have to be accumulated?
Got it. So definitely agree that productivity has to be measured by time in the office. There are companies that have tried to apply productivity measure in a hybrid. There's plenty of tools that allow you to track how long somebody is on, let's say, Slack or whatever, right?
Yeah.
To me, both are very counterproductive. If I'm in the office and I want to go and socialize with my colleagues, I can do that, and it's going to look like I'm in the office. Or I can buy a tool and just keep moving my mouse. Then here, like I'm here. I don't think that serves anybody. I think that we're better suited to actually rethinking how we work, how we measure progress and productivity. And I think that really needs to be around what are our key objectives and what are the associated results that we're looking at. What are our key performance indicators? And honestly, at that point, even if somebody is working, half of the time, they're not really, or if somehow in that half time, they're more productive than they used to be in 40 hours.
Yeah, as long as you're getting a workout, what it should be, and definitely, just a different way of looking at it. How about there's so much going on in terms of employees, the personal life. We all gone through so much over the last few years, financial challenges, or we have recently, I was reading a report, a lot of people dealing with the mental health challenges. Not only people, if 1 in 3 Canadians is saying somebody's either dealing with these challenges or they know somebody in a family who's dealing with these challenges. So these numbers are very high number, and your staff is going through that, and definitely business leaders are also going through the similar challenges. So how do you deal with those challenges when you're working in a hybrid environment? In office is easy, you can have a conversation with somebody, but you don't know when somebody working remotely what are these people are going through.
I mean, as you said, you're gonna have those challenges whether you're in the office or remote. I mean, in the past, when I have been a leader, we were trained to kind of see if somebody is having some mental health challenges that they haven't brought with weekly conversations, right? My perspective on is, if you don't have a good relationship with your leader, whether they spot it or you want it, you're not going to do it if you don't feel comfortable, if you don't feel that there's stress, right? So the onus is on the leader to build a culture and a workplace where people feel confident talking about it. My other perspective is that we're all bringing our whole self to work, and I don't know at what point we convince ourselves, especially from the organizational perspective, that people need to somehow be robots in the office and then have their human muscles.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way, right? So I build that type of trust, makes it more comfortable for employees to talk about their challenges. You kind of start moving the needle further and further towards like, I can now bring my whole person to work, and it actually is demonstrated that I will perform better because I'm not suppressing a vital part of me, right? And then finally, let's talk about hybrid. Hybrid also allows us to be more flexible in terms of time, work. We do better work integration. So if I'm dealing with, let's say, a mental health challenge, right? And I know that right now, meeting, go lie down for an hour, it's going to help me feel better. And then I come back after that hour and I want to productive. Well, that to me, that integration has now been so much more beneficial for me and the individual and for the organization.
Yeah, when when your staff is taken care, they're well taken care. Definitely, they're gonna help a lot more to move the business forward, right? So, who can they can take care of their client much better. Somebody said, if you take care of your staff, they will definitely go out of the way to take care of your customers. Other side. So you gotta definitely take care. But these are the challenges. Not only staff is dealing with that. I know a lot of business leaders also dealing with these challenges. Before helping out to their staff, they have to take care of themselves as well, right? So if you're not in a good health or good mental state, how are you gonna go help out your teams and help them to deal with some of those challenges, right?
And then it's absolutely, and I think that we put so much unnecessary pressure on leaders as it comes to that. We've almost made them believe that leaders need to be the end all be all. They need to have all the answers. They need to do everything without necessarily having the same type of support. But when I talk about having trust with your team, it's a two-way street. And as you support your team, then they're more willing to support you. And I speak from personal experience because, as I mentioned, I used to lead teams in some of the larger organizations. And so I actually, if I were in the office and I was struggling with something personally, I would actually upfront tell my team about that. And I would say, okay, like if I'm not as focused as I usually am, distracted, please bear with me. And it was never backfired to me. People rally around you to help you out. Because again, if you bring your whole human self work, you form these connections and go beyond just like the professional objectives that we have together, right?
Yeah. And that helps you build trust with your staff as well, right? When you come from the vulnerable space that you're sharing what you're dealing with, definitely other people are going to feel comfortable sharing their challenges as well with you as well, right?
Exactly. And I think that it goes even beyond just the mental health challenges, right? I work a lot with very small businesses. Some of them were solopreneurs and now they're just moving to entrepreneurs, and also the insecurity that comes from that is the lack of leadership abilities that they have never had to deliver through a team. And I see a lot of people spinning their wheels and trying to figure it out on their own instead of, again, sitting down with the team and saying, hey, it's like we're all working this new environment. How can we support each other? How can we experiment together? I don't have all the answers. You're all professionals. I would love to hear your feedback on that. So it goes well beyond just like the mental health challenges and the challenges of a hybrid environment. And I would say it's an approach that can be expanded to just about any area of leadership.
Yeah. And that is the great point. I often find that, my staff sometimes knows that they know business very well, they know technology very well, and they have an answer to a lot of stuff I'm trying to figure out. They already know the answer to that. So it's just a matter of asking them. And very often they have a much better approach than I would have to some of those challenges that we are dealing with as a team.
Mm-hmm. And I know that I'm biased because I'm also a professional coach, but my perspective is that the further you get removed from the front lines, the bigger the importance of asking the right questions is, and the lesser the importance of knowing the granular detail of the information, right? So I believe that the more you question, the more you probe your team to come up with the solution, the better you equip them to start thinking in broader sense and feeling like they own the outcomes of the business rather than just the outcomes of their part within the business.
Yeah, you don't have to solve as a business leader who are watching or listening to us. We all tend to solve all the problem by ourselves. Every time there's a problem, because we've done that before, our human instinct is just run to the problem and solve it for them. But instead of, if you just take a step back and just guide your people, let them solve the problem. Definitely you not only solved it for once, you solved it forever, because they're gonna figure out next time there's a problem to some sort of challenges that they're trying to figure out. They already have the solution to it. They will not come back to you because they already solved the problem.
Exactly. And I see this a lot in leaders, and I think that we all go into business for ourselves because we want to do all the great things that we know how to do, and then we end up doing everything but. And for some reason, we get so comfortable with a type of firefighting that we forget that if we took a step back and let the less exciting things be handled by the we can be the visionaries that we need to be, right? That's number one. I don't know why it's against the first go and jump 2 feet and right to fight fire, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is that it's probably something that we learned as we were building the business. We cobbled it together on the spot, and now has become the way we solve this particular issue. And I never subscribe to the if it's not broken, don't fix it. I always think there's an opportunity for improvement in how we do things. And usually I find the improvement opportunities are being third party take it outside in look and help us see what the issues with our original solutions were. So when we go to that instinctual response to our want to go and fix it myself, we hurt ourselves in learning ways.
Yeah. Well, a lot of business leaders, we all come from technical backgrounds, right? So most of businesses started because we had a technical background. We were very good at what we did, and then we started a business because we want to solve the problem for market as well, right? So having that technical background, you just not more open to the go just jump on a problem and trying to solve a problem, right? Because that's your background, right? So it just learning over the time, that stepping back and letting people solve the problem and just guiding them and just watch. I just sit back and watch, let them figure out the problems. I think that it takes time, but it requires to build a skill set that you need as a leader to just not solve every single problem out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to find out what it was that kind of flipped that switch for you. There's usually one thing that happens in your business when you're like, I no longer want to do all of this. I just want to do the thing that I want to do. Right? So was there any specific example where you experienced something where you're like, I'm just going to let the team deal with it?
Well, I come from technical background. As I teach organization, we solve problems all day. This is what we do. Clients called us, we solve their problems all day. But what I find is if I keep helping to solve those problems keep coming back to me over and over. So I wanted to do less on a problem, more on a solutions, trying to scale the company. If I keep getting involved in those problems, then I never can get your head out of the water and trying to see other side what I need to focus on. So I wanted to do that. When I was trying to find out, I was getting pulled into those problems. Then I realized that that is not my role in this company. My value is not solving those problems. My value is solving some business problems that I need to solve instead of technical problems. So that's when I try to do that, that's when I learned that I need to step away from these problems. Let people who are better than me, they do it all the time, instead of me trying to get into those problems. Let them solve those problems, and I focus more on the business problems.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, my example is a little bit simpler, but basically I used to work as an accountant, and I was just like, I'm going to pay somebody else to do my bookkeeping when I could do this. I did it 25 years ago. I hated it. My bookkeeping was never eventually was intervention.
Yeah.
You just outsource this one thing, or even initial to everything. But it was just like the day of my existence. So I was like, no more. I need to let people do what they do. And for me to actually scale my impact, I need to dedicate my time to where I can add the most value, as you said.
Yeah, your role changes as your company scales, right? Your role has to change. If you're just playing the same role, that even though company scale, you can't sustain the company, right? Your role changes. So you got to change your perspective with your role as well. And I know a lot of business leaders, I know the two of my colleagues, business leaders, they both work in operations instead of growing a company. And I think that's also part of knowing where the skill set is. If their skill set is only operational, they don't want to learn to scale a company. So they hire a CEO and they still involved on the operational side and let the CEO drive their company. So there's different ways of looking at it. But, you just got to find what role you have and where do you make most impact in a company. If you want to stick with the operations, then be it. But let's find somebody else who can drive the company to the growth that you're looking for.
Absolutely agree. And that's an excellent point, because when I start working with a new client, right, and they'll state their problem however they're going to state it when we start working together. But it's usually something to the effect of like, I either need to grow the business or I need to learn how to more efficiently deliver the business so that I can grow the business. And so they always start talking to me about like financial, the team and all that kind of stuff. And I sometimes say, okay, like, let me ask you this. What part of the business delivery, if anything, do you want to retain, right? Because my focus is always what is going to make you happy so that you're not dreading it into the office. And if it's operations and you don't want to be the CEO, by means you hire a CEO and you do your operations and you excel at it. Yeah. But very few people stop to think about it because it's been drilled enough that a company scales, you're first the solopreneur, then you bring in a couple of people. It works as a tribal company where with some you get stuff done. And then you build more structure with you continuously being moved up to the next role until, you're CEO.
Yeah.
And it's not a one size fits all in all.
Yeah, last thing you want in a company is when you're trying to scale that energies fighting energies, right? You don't want those conflict. You need everything's to lined up properly, right? And I see a lot of companies where they're trying to. It's a family-run businesses, especially in a family-run business when there's multiple family members are working in a business. They all have a lot of blurry lines between the roles and responsibilities, and you see a lot of struggle in those companies when they're trying to scale those companies.
And I've found that to be even not for family-run businesses, but like with co-founders, let's say, somehow we don't dedicate enough time to the roles and responsibilities discussion anymore. And that is so important, especially in an area, in a decade where collaboration is so big. We also need to know where our responsibilities and authorities start and end. Because if everybody thinks that they have the final say, we're going to continuously spin our wheel. So to me, the more organization are advocating being recognized our responsibilities when you're one person. But as you need and as you grow, you kind of have to define the boundaries for people, whether they be your family or not, on how they're supposed to engage with the organization and what are their needs or within their control in order to accomplish their role. So then they're not competing with everybody.
Very interesting. Yeah, I know that I see a lot of struggles in that area, especially, business leaders, we just passed the COVID and they try to scale their companies back to the revenue level where they should be. So they have a lot of challenges to figure out. A lot of companies, they had to reinvent the products they were building before. A lot of companies had to reinvent the services they were doing before, whether it's delivery of the service or just engaging with the customer. So it's a lot of refiguring out how they're going to, structure the business around. And these are some of the challenges definitely they're dealing with. Beside these challenges, what other challenges do you see that business leaders, what they need to do in order to scale their companies back again? They need to grow their companies. What do you see some of those items they can do if you recommend something, or what do you see some of the challenges they're up against?
I mean, let's talk about the challenges, because we saw, and based on the examples they just gave, we saw a lot of, I don't want to call it flip-flopping, but let's say companies that have a lot of e-commerce capabilities, COVID hit, they wanted to capitalize on some rules of their organization, and then after sort of things started back out, like never went back fully to the mall, but it was now way. Then you need off this whole workforce, right? And I see a number of challenges with their and how an organization operates. Then you're going to continue to have these variable fluctuations, or your foot is on the gas now. So So one is business planning and scenario planning. So we can't guess what's going to happen 5 years from now, but we can have some hypotheses, and then we can have some plans around so we would adjust certain scenarios as they would come up. And I think the fact that we're so many organizations now underprepared for a pandemic that we spent 5 to 10 years ago to be for one, the fact that we're moving towards on-pages workplaces and we want to start with that is a pure business planning failure from my perspective. That is, if there was kind of a scenario plan, let's keep with the e-commerce examples, then they would have plans to say, okay, if somehow we exceed our guidance for this year, we see that there's an uptick in demand. This is how these are the plans we would trigger in order to be successful and capitalizing. Then that wouldn't be a lot more prepared for like an uptick in demand that they could have jumped on. And they would have thought through that you need to satisfy this uptick in demand through fully staffing within your company, right? Mm-hmm. They would have had some contingency plans on if we have this increase in demand, these are the skill sets we would have needed in order to fill that gap. And these are where we would have gone out to contract the majority of the skill set so that we actually can quickly scale down if we need to, if somehow we miscounted on this uptick in demand, right? So like business planning, scenario planning, and different ways of delivering your work are integral for, especially for very volatile areas that we're looking right now.
I see. Very interesting. Yeah, definitely. That's a great point. Those things would have figured it out. I think it's the time that now it's time to scale. So let's talk about your journey, Lena. How did you get so good at? How did you get into helping business leader to scale these companies and build those workplace environments? How do you get involved into this leadership side of things?
So I used to work for small organizations, and then I moved to some of the bigger telcos in Canada. And I fell in love with the strategy and business planning functions. So I actually have a project management, which nicely fits in with like financial and operating planning and strategic planning, and where it's really interesting is they usually when it comes to strategy. So work with the strategy, but then they have the resource planning, determining what is needed for the operations and how do we make sure that we set it up. Because I can work both in very granular piece as well as the strategic piece, I can now bridge the two and say, okay, if you operationalize the strategy, this is what you can expect, and then what do you do to fill the gap? So I did a lot of when I'm working for the large telcos within Canada. I ended up meeting teams. I ended up setting up project management offices, agile centers of excellence, and so on. And it was advantage to work with smaller to medium-sized companies because I believe that they're the blood of Canada. If that's where, if we can make sure that the smaller companies and the middle class are successful, we're going to succeed as a country. And I had acquired so much experience and now I'm going to kind of scale my own impact and help others be successful. So when COVID, I got laid off, and I think that is a sign that it was the time to do it. And I know that it was probably the worst time because running a business during COVID was very difficult. I could survive as an organization. I think I could survive just about anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and definitely this is an area, from your background, as you mentioned, operationally or executive level, there's so many blind spots when it comes to these two areas. And all business leaders, we came from a technical background or whatever background we came from, when you try to scale a business, there's so many blind spots. And you're not going to be able to see all the blind spots. You need a people like you to see those blind spots and, avoid those mistakes that we're going to make in a business and help scaling company. I think that's a great help that business leaders can use. That you're not gonna be able to see all your blind spot. You need somebody like you on a side. So just look out for the blind spot and let's make sure decisions right, the first time, and then you don't make those mistakes. So how does a club Clubnet fits into that stuff. You've been working on this project Clubnet. So is that the same approach what you just mentioned to helping our business leaders?
Absolutely. So within Clubnet, we have a couple of services that we offer. One is leadership and executive coaching. So that's more from earlier on in our conversation around what should your leadership style be for the context of your organization so that you feel authentic to yourself and then you can confidently engage your team. We've just found that a lot of small business owners, because they have not led a team before, tend to struggle a little bit with that. So that's where the coaching comes in. Then we work on operations and project delivery. So that is again when it comes to when you close the work, you actually have to deliver it. How do you do the consistency with high quality and with a continuous focus to lowering your costs for delivery, especially if you bring more people in. And finally, we also do technology support, especially as it relates to companies that either have hybrid work environments where they have multiple offices. So how do you optimize your office infrastructure, the connectivity between the offices, and then how do you use processes and tools to continue to drive that efficiency?
Yeah, definitely. When you're trying to scale a company, last thing you want is you being very, very less effective, right? At a productivity wise, right? You want more efficient. So as you're scaling your business, you're not adding as many people that your payroll's not growing as you try to scale a business, right? If your payroll's going to grow as you're trying to scale a business, then now you're defeating a purpose, right? So you need to, we all want to keep our payroll under control when you're trying to scale our businesses, right?
Exactly. And I find that a lot of the challenges that companies experience when they do scale their business and they invest in technology, which is great. You're looking at some maybe automation or removing some hand off and human error. But what a lot of businesses don't look at is the streamlining processes. And you can't bring in layers of people or technology and expect the process to remain the same, right? So we always look at any piece within the business from the people, process, technology piece. And we just find that it's not very for a smaller organization. And that seems to be what truly is helping us come up with very precise solutions for the context of our customers.
Very nice. Yeah, definitely. As a company grow, or you add more people, every step in the way, your process change, your business change, your technology changes, right? All of these three items are changing, so you got to keep tweaking all those three items as you're trying to scale your business.
Exactly, and constantly keep an eye on their performance, as we talked about, like how do we measure productivity from the people, how do we measure their performance in the process, how do we measure the performance of technology, so that if something were to change, then we can identify the impact that in we generate, bring it over to our benchmark or to actually improve upon the benchmark that we have.
Very interesting. So yeah, no, definitely business leader are watching or listening to us, definitely I will recommend that reach out to you for conversation. I definitely learned so much from our conversation. I'm sure business leader watching, just connect with you and reach out to you for a discussion, and who knows where the discussion can take you, but at least you get a different perspective when you talk with somebody, right? Just a perspective can help you make better decisions. So
exactly.
Where can people learn about you? Where can they find you, Iliana?
So our website is www.clubnet.ca. They can find me, Iliana Rocha, on LinkedIn, and we welcome anybody reaching out to us, even if you just want to have a next larger conversation, like we just increase some ideas. And we also like to give some more fruits and ease and fixes for people when they come to us.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to include all the links to your website, LinkedIn below the video as well. I'll definitely recommend business leader to reach out to you for conversation. Who knows, we're definitely, a lot of business leader when they try and deal with the operational challenges where your expertise lies at, and then they're trying to deal with the strategic level. Those are two different challenges that you're trying to solve. You need people like you, to cover all the blind spots so you're not making a lot of mistakes. You can scale your business much faster that way without making any mistakes, right? So reach out to you for conversation. But I want to acknowledge your time. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I learned so much from you, and I'm sure business leader watching, they gain tons of perspective, and recommend reach out to you for conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you.
All right. Thank you so much, Iliana. Have a good one.